Good morning. Thank you, Louisville High School Band and Mr. Bleininger. We appreciate your music all the time. We've gathered here this morning, as have other citizens in the United States, to honor the fallen veterans of our military. We observe this day to pay tribute to these men and women. This day at one time was known as Decoration Day in the years following the Civil War, and it became an official federal holiday in 1971. One of the earliest Memorial Day remembrances was organized by a group of freed slaves in Charleston, South Carolina. Less than a month after the Civil War ended in 1865, the tradition of visiting graves of veterans, decorating them with flowers, reciting prayers, and also singing songs continues today. During World War I, our nation found itself in another major conflict, and Memorial Day eventually evolved to commemorate American military personnel who died in all wars, including World War II, the Vietnam War, Korea, as well as wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. On this Memorial Day of 2021, I encourage all of our citizens to join in remembering the friends and family members who have given their lives to maintain freedom and liberties that we all enjoy. At this time, I would like to introduce Reverend Dr. David Anderson from the Paradise United Church of Christ, who will give us the invocation.
Abraham Lincoln once said, "Honor to the soldier and sailor everywhere who bravely bears his country's cause. Honor also to the citizen who cares for his brother in the field and serves as he best can the same cause. Honor to him, only less to him, who braves for the common good the storms of heaven and the storms of battle." Let us pray. Oh God, it's a beautiful morning to gather here in this sacred place. I thank you for this community and for those who have served this community. Oh God, today we are fulfilling and called to constantly fulfill these words of Abraham Lincoln. We honor the soldier. Anytime a hero fell fighting for this country, it is a sacred and honored thing. But in a civil war, there was never really an enemy. There was always a brother, a son, a father on the other side of the field. A civil war meant that we were fighting and firing at mirrors. God, we thank you for the names that we will reveal on this monument in just a moment, and for the families and the legacies that continue to bear their image. We look back in history and we wonder how a country could have such disdain for other citizens of the United States. Then we see how we conduct our politics today and realize that we are unfortunately not far off. Lord, forgive us. The easy part is honoring the fallen. The hardest part is walking with the living. And as Lincoln indicates, fighting in battle, caring for those soldiers, or engaging in the storms of the culture and heaven, all of these are important. Lord, give us the strength to do them all. Oh God, our prayer is one of remembrance and honor. But God, we know that honor does not come in the prayer we say today, but in how we live walking away from it. We remember the past to honor it, but also that we may learn from it. On a day like this, standing in front of a beautiful monument, surrounded by a community as strong as this one, may we actively remember and do from this point on. Amen.
Let us stand, please. Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose red stripes and bright stars through the perilous
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. On behalf of the city, I'd like to welcome all of you here today also. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our city staff and our council members. We have with us Councilmember Joni Aljancic, Councilmember Dick Slackford, Councilmember Rick Yeagley, Councilmember Corey Street, and myself, Mayor Pat Fallot. We also have with us our city manager, Larry Collins, our police chief and assistant city manager, Chief Andrew Tarowski, and I did see our city clerk, Tiffany Justice, here also. So I want to thank them for being here, and I believe Dan Milsap, who is our service director, is here also, that has really fixed up our monument area, and we appreciate what all they do. At this time, I'm going to ask Betty Derry, please come forward, and I'm going to present to her the proclamation from the office of the mayor. From the office of the mayor proclaims, whereas originating in the years following the Civil War, Declaration Day was a day spent honoring and decorating the grave sites of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for their country. And whereas Memorial Day became the official federal holiday in 1971, deriving from Decoration Day, to honor all those who lost their lives while defending their country. And whereas many men bravely fought, were injured, and some lost their lives during the Civil War, including the numerous men in the Louisville and Nimishillen Township area. And whereas to remember and commemorate those that gave their lives during the Civil War, a dedicated group of men made up of Michael Carden, Mark Brunner, John Brunner, Ron Derry, and the Louisville Nimishillen Historical Society extensively researched the names. And whereas through their extensive research, a list of over 300 brave men from the area were found that had fought in the Civil War. 100 were wounded, and 30 that paid the ultimate sacrifice of their lives. Those that paid the ultimate sacrifice, 27 currently have their names engraved on the Civil War memorial plaque, dedicated for all to remember on this Memorial Day, May 31st, 2021. Whereas we are honoring and remembering each of the heroes whose names adorn the Civil War Memorial, and each of those heroes who have since paid the ultimate sacrifice on this Memorial Day. Now, therefore, I, Patricia A. Fallot, Mayor Council Member of the City of Louisville, would like to extend a special thanks to those who worked so hard to bring the Civil War Memorial to fruition, and to all those heroes giving their lives for the freedom and the safety of this great country. We honor them on this Memorial Day 2021. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to seal the city of Louisville, Ohio, to be affixed this 31st day of May, 2021. Patricia A. Fallot, Mayor Council Member, City of Louisville, Ohio. You're welcome.
At this time, I would like to introduce Grace Ryman. Grace is our Constitution Queen, and she's going to share some remarks with you.
On Memorial Day, we honor our veterans who gave their lives to protect the liberties afforded to Americans. They did not celebrate war, but they stepped forward and answered when America called. Generations of brave Americans have shouldered the burden of defending freedom so that we might continue living in a free and democratic society. Please take a moment this Memorial Day to honor and remember and thank those that have served to protect our nation, our citizens, and our way of life. Thank you.
I would like to introduce now Bill Ankeny, Chairman, He's going to share some remarks on the 29th OVI Company G.
The Grand Army of the Republic, the GAR, was a fraternal organization composed of veterans of the Union Army, Cavalry, Artillery, and Navy who served in our American Civil War. That organization, led by General John A. Logan, commander of the GAR, on May 5th, 1868, called for a nationwide day of remembrance. Later that month, on May 30th, the first Declaration Day was established, a day in which families would decorate the graves with flowers to remember and honor those Civil War veterans who died during the war. That first Declaration Day would later become our Memorial Day. But it's still a day set aside to honor not only our Civil War veterans, but also men and women, past and present, who gave their lives in service to our country. Today, we recognize and honor 27 men who served during our American Civil War. When we formed the 29th Ohio Living History Association, we wrote a purpose statement of what we wanted to accomplish as an organization. That statement reads in part, "It is our desire to honor the memory of those men who served in the 29th Ohio Volunteer Infantry by accurately portraying the 1861-1865 time period. We not only portray the life of the soldier in the war, but also the civilians on the home front who had a vital part in supporting these men. The 29th OVI is an organization dedicated members, both reenactors and historians, interested in preserving the history of the Civil War and the 29th Ohio. We desire to do this through educating the general public, especially our children, who are the future of our country. We feel that the Civil War is an important part of our history, and it is our hope that the memory of those who lived and died during this war will never be forgotten. We believed that then when we started this organization, and that is why we're here today. We commend the mayor, the members of the Historical Society, and the people of Louisville for raising money to erect this plaque honoring these men. We commend you, especially in light of the times we are living in our country, where memorials as this, erected after the Civil War, are being removed. But when we try to cancel that period of our nation's history, we must remember, as in all conflicts, it's not always about presidents, politicians, and generals. People's lives were affected. Ordinary people, like you and I. People who had stories to tell of what they saw and what they experienced. Their stories still need to be told. The names of these men written on this plaque had stories of who they were and what they did. Their stories still need to be told. And it's our organization's desire to tell their stories and the history of our nation. For the men, women, and children of the 29th Ohio, it is our privilege to be here today to help dedicate this plaque to honor these men who gave the last full measure of devotion to our country, and also that a people of men, women, and children may be free. Thank you.
speaker is Dr. David Mungo, officer of the 6th Ohio Cavalry. Please help me in welcoming David Mungo.
Thank you very much. I want to commend all of you for being here because that's what this is about. It's about people coming out to honor and remember the fallen. I want to start with a little endeavor here, a little premise, and that is that human nature never changes. Mankind throughout all of civilization has suffered from the same problems: greed, envy, lust. We don't change. We all have the same basic instincts and desires. Human nature is never satisfied. We always want more. For me, this is why I believe that the Bible is actually so relevant. It addresses those conditions of the human heart, and those conditions never change and haven't changed in thousands of years. Part of human nature is also to forget. Just as we sin because we're sinners, we forget because we're forgetters. Humans are good at forgetting. America is good at forgetting. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a physician in Alliance, and I have the pleasure of having students in the operating room a lot. And of course, after I'm done instructing them on medical questions, I get to grill them on history. And it's fun. But it's also unfortunate and sad. Educated people, nursing students that come through and don't know the very basics. And believe me, I understand. I'm preaching to the choir. Again, I commend you for being here. But the younger generation has no idea about basic things. Our high schoolers today have no conscious memory of 9/11. Most people have no idea what Pearl Harbor was. Most people have no idea who even fought in the American Civil War. I asked some middle schoolers, 13, 14-year-olds going into high school, who fought in the Civil War. They named the French, the British. They just don't know. And that's a failure on our part to pass on the history to the next generation. I recognize that learning history can be dull and boring for our students that are here. There's better ways of learning history too, though. We don't remember details, but we certainly remember people and their stories. For example, most people have no idea about any of the facts of World War II, but many people know Saving Private Ryan and have watched that movie. We learn more about an event when we learn about that event through the eyes of people that lived it. People have heard of Chris Kyle, George Patton, the Red Baron, Hal Moore, James Doolittle, Audie Murphy, George Custer, Benedict Arnold. Most of us have heard of those people, whether or not we know the conflicts that they served in or the circumstances that they served in. And that's just a way of teaching history, learning about it and reading about it through the eyes of another. History can also be taught void of purpose or manipulated for different purposes. Sadly, that is happening today. History is being changed to suit a new purpose. There's efforts such as the 1619 Project that are trying to rewrite American history. There are forces that want to divide us as a nation, seeing only the bad in people and not building upon the good. Learning our history is a way to honor the sacrifices of those that made history. You won't be able to recognize a lie unless you know the truth. So why do we need memorials such as these? Because human nature doesn't change. We don't remember as well without them. They've been built by humans for all of civilization. We have them on our battlefields. We have them on our cemeteries, in our parks, in our public squares. In the book of Joshua, in chapters 4, verses 6 through 7, God actually tells Joshua to take 12 stones from the Jordan River, where the Israelites crossed into the promised land. And he says, "Let this be a sign among you, so that when your children ask later, saying, 'What do these stones mean to you?' then you'll be able to explain what God did. So these stones shall become a memorial to the sons of Israel forever." We needed monuments back then. We need them now. We need monuments to remind us of what our ancestors have done, remember the sacrifices, where we came from, and what we have gone through. Memorials are supposed to stir up emotion and memories. So that brings us to today, Memorial Day. It's the opportunity to remember those that actually died in the service of our country. This holiday, as you have heard, was started after the Civil War. Over 600,000 American dead, more than all wars since then combined. These, again, are men that gave the last full measure of devotion. They lived and died for something greater than themselves. I believe that if you live just for yourself, then when you die, everything you lived for dies with you. Living for something bigger or eternal means investing in things that will last for eternity. And so what were these men investing in? They were investing in a nation predicated on the belief that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. So what do we need to remember? Let me just do a brief overview with the purpose of trying to refresh and educate American history of what our ancestors fought and died for. First was the American Revolution. The Declaration of Independence is considered our birth certificate for our nation. We fought the British to free ourselves from tyranny and centralized government power overseas. The French helped us do that. Next came the Barbary Pirate Wars, where we battled the Muslim states of North Africa. We landed Marines on the shores of Tripoli in what is now Libya. We fought the British again in the War of 1812. That's where our national anthem came out of. We fought Santa Anna in the Mexican War in 1846. And that brings us up to the American Civil War, considered by many to be the last war of our revolution and independence, finally settling the one question that our founding fathers couldn't settle, and that is obviously slavery. There's a difference between why wars are started and why they're fought. Slavery was the unresolved political reason that caused a war, but the soldiers fought for many different reasons. Not all Northerners were fighting to end slavery. Not all Southerners were fighting to preserve it. Some were. The reason soldiers fight are as varied as the soldiers themselves. Since then, our soldiers have fought on the Western Plains, in the Spanish-American War, Cuba and the Philippines. World War I left Americans scattered across the globe fighting against Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. World War II, for us, started on December 7th, 1941. We fought fascism and imperialism on both sides of the globe. We liberated concentration camps. There's still nations today that say that that didn't even happen. We bled in the Korean Peninsula, fighting communism, again in Vietnam, the Middle East, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Libya. The reasons for these conflicts vary and may not all have been just, but the soldiers we remember and honor answered the call and did their duty and deserve our respect for being willing to do so. John 15:13 says, "Greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for his friends." Sorry, the wind's getting in my papers. So what do we need to remember? What is the benefit of remembering? Well, we get to learn from our mistakes. It spurs us to do better. Thomas Jefferson said, "History, by apprising them of the past, will enable them to judge of the future. It will avail them of the experience of other times and other nations. It will qualify them as judges of the actions and designs of men. It will enable them to know ambition under every disguise it may assume, and knowing it, to defeat its views." Patrick Henry also, "I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know no way of judging the future but by the past." So what are the lessons of that Civil War that we fought? We proved the hard way that a house divided cannot stand. Yes, we in this country can kill each other. It was brother against brother, state against state. And like Bill said, it doesn't sound so impossible now. People in this country back then were willing to die for calling good evil and evil good, both sides being absolutely sure that they were right. This past year saw our nation tear down statues to Abraham Lincoln in Boston and Portland and several other cities. Other statues and monuments torn down because of labels they were given. The people doing the tearing down certainly had no idea what American history was about and had no idea who these people were. There are people choosing to see the worst in people instead of the best. These memorials are not for perfect people. There is no such thing. They're to remember the events that these soldiers participated in and the times they represent. When we tear down our monuments and statues, we are denying future generations the opportunity to learn from what they represent. You think we can remember without a monument? Well, look how well we remember even with them. Some people will say it offends you. I say good. Maybe it'll spur you to learn. Along the lessons of learning, I once said that when an old person dies, it's sort of like a library burning down. All their experiences go with them. The stories of days gone by are priceless. We have an opportunity to sit down with veterans, grandparents, neighbors, and hear those stories firsthand, because we learn better when we learn about things through the eyes of others. Also, part of human nature is for us to get into our comfort zones. We like comfort. We don't like being uncomfortable. But being uncomfortable is needed to make progress. Our past may make us uncomfortable, but it is better to keep us from repeating it. Better to have uncomfortable conversations than not. Better to talk about history, race, politics, and religion than fight and kill over them like we did before, and others still do today across the globe. Learn something about this country every day. Most of us know what we know did not come from our classrooms, but from continued learning. Memorial Day is a day to do that, to remember our past. In the words of Abraham Lincoln, as part of the Gettysburg Address, he said, "It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion." So that is our task. That's it. Thank you, and may God bless you and this country.
Project here is over here behind the doughboy statue, and for this I would like to have Mr. Ron Derry and Mr. Mark Brunner come up, and also Mike Carden, and explain a little bit about the plaque and what they're going to be doing today. So, gentlemen, please come up and give us a little bit of introduction. Thank you.
All right, I'm Ron Derry. I am known as the president of the Historical Society, but I didn't do all this work to get this project done. The work was done by Mark Brunner and Mike Carden, who's standing here beside me. They spent years. I heard this morning from Mark that he spent as many as 40 years looking up records. I know that Mike has spent a good 20 years looking up the records of the people who were in the war and those who did not make it through the war. So at that point, I'm going to let Mike give his story of what he found and how he did it.
Talking to the mic, please.
I didn't really come prepared to talk about what I did. One thing that's been important to me throughout this project is I've always been humbled by the fact that all of my research was done in the comfort of buildings that were heated and air conditioned. I never had to lay on a cold, frozen ground with only a blanket and my uniform. I never had anyone shooting at me. I never had to hold the hand of a fellow comrade as they passed away. So I really don't want to make this about what I've done or Mark Brunner. I want today to be about these men who gave their lives. Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to be reading the names of the honored dead. First, Ambrose Ballmet. John Ballmet. David Barnett. John Royer. Alvin M. Brown. George Ducomin. Joseph C. Gom. Isaiah Gilbert. James Higgins. Daniel Hauser. John Lesh. Daniel M. Lickenwalder. Henry Meffert. Emil Milsap. Louis Pearson. Solomon Robb. Amos Schultz. Henry Schultz. Christopher Slusser. William Slusser. Adam Snyder. George Snyder. Peter Snyder. Andrew Trump. John Wesley Warner. Benjamin Widener. Peter Zentz. That plaque, as I said before, is dedicated to the men from the Louisville and Nimishillen Township area who gave their lives during the Civil War, and we shall always remember them. Thank you.
Ready, aim, fire, move. When you're loaded, come to the ready. Aim. Fire. Fire! Go shoulder. 5 pay. Shoulder arm. Shoulder arm. Exact arm.
Just want to say thank you for each person that came out today and for everyone and everything that made today possible. Let's bow our heads for a benediction. May you go in peace, and may the God of peace and resurrection be the God that we follow and serve. May we never forget. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, Dave.
The Historical Society Museum will be open if anybody would like to go there and see what they have in the museum. So thank you again for coming.